fascinating Harvard study that came out, and you know the cliff notes of it really are the happiest people are the people that are actually doing what they're thinking about, that they've actually yoked action and intention. They're not, brooding over some sort of past trauma or injury and then projecting that into the future, creating some sort of negative anticipated memory out there. um, and, you know, this ability to essentially yoke what we're thinking about and what we're doing is really requires a lot of work. And, it's hard to sit on your ass and do nothing in the modern age. And so this idea of carving out, 10 or 20 minutes of time seems really inconvenient, but just to actually sit and be present and witness emotions and thoughts and feelings as phenomenon arising and subsiding in your consciousness moment to moment, just to be the non-judgmental witness of that and not identify with them, not attach to them, and just see them essentially appear and disappear in consciousness, you know, that over time become that ability punctuates the other parts of your life, and begins to spill into, not the time that you're spending in prayer or in meditation, but actually the time that you're spending at work and with other people and in regular quotidian life, such that you're not as triggerable and that, that you are able to find that space between stimulus and response, to not always attach to every fleeting emotion or thought or news item, etc. And this is hard, it's a hard thing to do to meditate every day. But again, there are incredible benefits to doing hard things.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have to actively choose to do these things. I mean, even from the walk to the from the hotel today in New York City to the building that I'm going to, I had my AirPods in and I started to listen to something and I said, "You know what? I'm just going to take everything out and I'm going to take a 10-minute walk with no other sound, no other thought. I'm not gonna talk on the phone. I'm not gonna micromanage any other part of my day. I'm just gonna listen and walk. And there's enough sounds in the city that it can really heighten the ADHD in me. So it's an interesting dynamic, but it was a 10-minute active decision to just release all the other stuff. And I have to do that all the time because there's, for me, even traveling a lot, like I travel quite a bit, and right before I travel, I find myself getting that hyper tight. I just sent my youngest son a text this morning apologizing for snapping at him while he was driving. He's a new driver, and he sent me something this morning, and I sent back and said, "Hey, just so you know, I I was leaving you again, which I don't like doing. And I'm traveling and haven't been home in a while. And sometimes, no matter how strong we look, we're tired or we break. And I have to be aware not to get to that moment. And so these are all what you're describing are things for us to have more self-awareness of ourselves, but also to give ourselves the ability to find it. Because if we don't shut out the noise, we're just going to keep finding those triggers and the social media is going to give us whatever we want to see and they know it. They know what we need to hear.
Yeah, yeah. I love that practice, um, that you engaged in the city there. There's this kind of sound meditation practice, that I often engage in as well, where yeah, you just notice sound, because most of the time we're kind of trudge through life, kind of in this monophonic wave. There's this one big sound wave, and but when you begin to actually untangle it, you're like, "Oh, yeah, there's a cab over there, there's a little train noise over on the right, here's a conversation." You can start to you become sort of the engineer, the sound engineer of your life, and, you just become hyper aware, and you're noticing things, and it can be like a good trick in some ways, it's almost a gimmick, as many meditation techniques are, actually. to bring you into presence, really. And, uh, and then again, these practices that can seem kind of esoteric and, and sometimes unrelatable, they come in really, really handy when you send your son a really beautiful text message, right? Because you found a little bit of space and you were able to essentially analyze your own behavior, right? So because you were able to find that space. And this is how we progress and become better human beings. I mean, candidly, like I'm a intermittent faster, so I consolidate all my consumption of food in an 8-hour window, and there's great physiological impacts and benefits to doing that. But again, for me, the most potent attribute of it is psychological because even though I stop eating at 6 doesn't mean I don't get hungry at 9. But instead of mindlessly meandering to the larder for a bag of chips, I actually have to examine the nature of that stimulus, of that hunger, and ask myself, is this a biological need right now, Jeff? Or is this an emotional desire? Am I just essentially eating my feelings because I'm bored or things aren't going well or I'm tired or whatever? And it's always an emotional desire. There's plenty of stored warehoused energy on this frame to make it through a good month. So, just that practice, being a disciple to a fasting practice, for example, it provides you with that space to examine your behaviors, and then again, that spills over into other parts of your life, because if you can eschew that kind of needless traipsing over to the refrigerator, can you also maybe take a pause between that next time that you're, grabbing for that second glass of wine, or when your children are being, obstreperous and annoying, or, when someone cuts you off in traffic, or when you're in a, stressful conversation with someone at work. Oh, wait a minute. There's that space available to me because I cultivated that capacity. And, I can live in higher alignment with my principles because of that space. And so, I think that's why all these practices can really, really enhance our life in ways that we don't always expect.
Yeah, and you have to make the room for it, and you have to actively practice it. I think that the key that a lot of us do when we first start is that, we expect to be good at something, but you're never going to be good at something until you actually are practicing it on a regular basis. I mean, it takes that discipline, that consistency, even the results, seeing the results sometimes helps you. I'm a better father, a better husband, a better friend, a better human when I start my days off slow. If I get up and I have my cup of coffee and I get to go through my prayer and meditation and I have my cold plunge and I have my sauna and I get my workout in, I feel like I have done everything I need to do for the day. Everything after that is easy for me. It's the days that I don't have that, that I have to then really work hard at making sure that I'm not making it all about me. And I'm aware that maybe I didn't have those outlets yet. So I need to find other ways to respond in a different way because I haven't gotten it out. So I got really attuned to the way I'm responding. The only other point I want to make, because I you said so many great things, and is when you're paying attention and you're noticing. I love that because you also start to notice something that every time I'm having any bad day or there's any challenge that's happening, I call this thing the habit of daily impact. And it's just the simple things like to your point, let's take the noticing and the sounds to one extra level. And let's say I'm going to smile at a person when they walk by. I'm going to notice the person who is homeless standing there that I make eyes with and I give something like let's actually create something where I'm able to impact someone else's life and then feel that connection, which is something that takes noticing. And so many of us, including myself, so often get in an elevator and the first thing we do is pull out our phone and we look at it. And now we've just taken ourselves away from a quick moment that we used to share years ago. Like every elevator ride was a smile, a nod, a hello. It wasn't like a turn right your back to someone and ignore them. So that noticing can then yield you connection. And I think that that's something that's so powerful and valuable.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think you can ritualize some of these. My friend Brendan was here the other day, and, he told me about one of his rituals, which is every doorway that he crosses through, he says, "When I enter this room, I am gonna be of service, and I am a happy man." I was like, "Huh." I was like, "That's pretty simple," and he's like, "Yeah, the proscenium of the doorway is my reminder, and I've ritualized it such that now every room that I enter, I just say that to myself, sort of automatically." And that guy, I will say, is of great service and is always happy. Brendan Burchard, you may have know him or something. But and so I think that there are ways to sort of ritualize some of these customs in our own life. And yes, I have a very, very similar kind of morning protocol as you do. And it's pretty non-negotiable for me, and I'll get up early and do it. And then, yeah, then I go on the road and it's like, okay, this is where uh, the spiritual rubber meets the hard asphalt of reality. How good am I gonna be today, after I've traveled for 10 hours? But, you know, this is where, the training comes in because, like a concert pianist, who has worked all his or her life learning the scales and, doing all of that hard work. The second that she steps on the stage, she forgets all of that. And that there is so much foundational knowledge built up in your technical well that you're able to actually then forget about all that and access the spiritual well. And that's really where sort of, epiphanous like musical performances happen. But we can also relate to that on some level too, which is like, yeah, you go and you do your work in the gym, you do your walking, you do your zone 5 a couple of times a week, whatever, you do all of that stuff such that then when you go out and travel, you've got that foundational base, right? That technical base that allows you to then be great on your trip to New York this week.
If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.